This is Back to Back.
Yo, what's up, back-to-backers? This is Willy Joy. Welcome to the show. This is Back to Back. This is my podcast. You are listening to it, and I am maybe being a little too hyper for the intro of this show. Nonetheless, I am very excited to bring you today's episode. My guest on the show is Jaykode, one of my favorite up-and-coming producers. I mean, he's been working for years, so maybe up-and-coming isn't the right label, but I kind of get a sense that he's really starting to catch a spark right now. It's a cool time to talk to him. We're going to get into that in just a minute. Before we do, I want to make sure that everybody listening has gone and checked out my new single. It's called Will You Be There? Features an amazing British singer named LL. Very happy with the reception it's getting so far. If you haven't heard it, please go check it out. I'm going to link to it in the description of this episode. And if you want another way to hear that song, all you have to do is pop on over to the Back to Bangers Spotify playlist. That is the weekly playlist that I update every week. It's the companion piece to this podcast. And it's going to have all the new music from myself and my guests, and all the music that we talk about in this show. So if we're talking and we mention something and you're not familiar with a song, or you think, oh yeah, that's a great song, I'd love to hear that, just go check the link in the description of this episode. Pop on over to Spotify, and it's going to be there waiting for you. I love this playlist. I think you guys are going to love it too. And whether you love it or hate it, you can let me know. My email address is backtobackpod@gmail.com, or you can hit me up on social media at WillyJoy or at backtobackpod. And, you can hit me up for whatever you want. I am here for you, and this is a community show. And speaking of the show, let's get on with today's episode from Jaykode. I met up with him out in Los Angeles, actually at his mom's house, which was awesome. I'd never recorded an episode in somebody's mom's place before. Great vibes, and I'm not trying to be funny saying that. It just felt very homey, it felt very comfortable. I enjoyed it, and it felt appropriate because he's born and raised in Los Angeles. Got an interesting story. His career kind of could have gone a few different ways for it to end up the way that it has, and now he's just out here crushing it. He played me some of his new music. I was really impressed. It's some next level stuff. And right now, he's got a collaboration with Wolfgang Gartner called The Upside Down that they just put out. It's one of the craziest tracks I've heard this year. Like, they really put their stamp on it. And we talk about how that came to be, working with one of your heroes. How does that happen? What does that feel like? Jaykode has a lot more planned for this year. He's sitting on a ton of new music that's going to start leaking out here pretty soon. So keep an eye on him. And in the meantime, let's get into this conversation. I'm going to put a link in the description of this episode where you can find all of Jaykode's music, tour dates, everything. But for now, this is me and Jaykode back to back. Let's go. It's a cool vibe in here, man. I like this.
Thank you.
A long time ago, this is a sort of unrelated story, but I was in between management at the time, and I had a meeting with the guys who were managing you at the time.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I actually didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't end up like, we just had a meal together and kind of talked about what we were doing. But, they were telling me about the work they did with you, and obviously I was already aware of you, and I really liked all of them. And even that was sort of a family vibe to me too. And that was one of the things they were really selling me on, was that, they take a very personal approach, and that it's more of a family than it is a business and all of that. Is that kind of vibe important to you? Is that something that you've carried through your career as you've gone?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we've been family for like 4 years. So it's definitely been more than just a business thing. I'd go to their place like at least once a week to do a lot of, because me and my manager, we used to cook a lot.
Right.
So like literally I'd be there once a week or once every 2 weeks, and we'd be cooking, and like it'd be like barely any business when we were actually hanging out and stuff. So yeah, it was totally family vibe. Like I don't know if you know, but I'm not with them anymore.
Okay, no, I didn't know.
Yeah, so
that's why I said at the time. I never want to assume.
Yeah, we parted ways just because the vision was a little bit different, and I know they're doing some different stuff, but we're still family to today too. So I'm still going to their place and cooking, so we're all good.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And even beyond just whoever you're working with, I always kind of had that sense that you were there's some DJs and some musicians that you just see like out partying, like running around the city, tearing shit up.
Yeah.
Whereas with you, which is I think why I maybe gravitated towards your whole vibe, because it's my vibe too. It's very much about just like I have a few good friends.
Yeah.
I have a good team, and we're kind of like head down working. And
yeah, I'm same vibe for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I feel like I did the whole party thing, like not even that crazy, but back when we just first turned 21 and, just going out every night and stuff. But
were you living in LA at the time?
Yeah, I've been in LA since I was born.
Okay.
I'm born and raised here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, born and raised here. Yeah, so now I'm just like, I go out and like, hang out with some friends and support my friends when they play and stuff. But most of the time I'm a homebody and just producing at home.
Well, that's probably good then, because I think a lot of people move to LA and kind of have this, crazy experience of like the city blows their mind and they just lose themselves for a year or two. Yeah. It's probably better if you already kind of know that it's all just fake and, you know where the real parts of it are.
Right. I give people coming out of LA fair warning about that. Yeah. I'm like, just be prepared.
I was like, one reason, there was a potential chance I was going to land in LA when I moved across the country, and I ended up in San Diego and was bummed at first. But now it's like, I think it worked out better. Like, yeah, I didn't need to have that LA experience.
Yeah. And you're just close enough.
Right, exactly, man.
Yeah.
It's what was growing up here like? Were you in this neighborhood? Like, what part of the city did you grow up in?
Yeah, I've always been in the valley kid till I die. Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, I've been everywhere. I was born in Lancaster, grew up in North Hollywood, Glendale, and then I've been here for 15 years in Granada Hills. It's quiet. It's suburban. Like, it's not city life.
Yeah, well, it's kind of what we were just talking about, right? You can be
that.
Close to the city, but you don't have to be, bombarded all the time.
Yeah. There's parking here. That's that's pretty much.
That's a huge deal, actually. Yeah.
That's the best part.
And what did your parents do?
My mom she's been an accountant at a jewelry company. She's their accountant. She's been there for like 25 years almost. And my dad did a lot of like catering and stuff like that growing up.
Were they musical at all?
My mom played the piano. She played piano for like 10 years almost when she was growing up. And then, so that's how I got into it.
Sure.
When I was 7, I picked up the piano. So I was classically trained for about 5 years. And then I hated practicing.
Yeah.
I did a few recitals. I hated practicing. And they told me, they're like, and I just wanted to stop. I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. And they told me, you're going to regret it. And till this day, I have no regrets except for one, and I was actually stopping, stopped taking piano lessons.
Yeah. My mom tried to teach me piano herself, and man, I wish I could have had the foresight to just let her do her thing back in the day.
Yeah, you don't think about that.
No, of course not.
A rebel without a cause.
Yeah. Or even I was too young to even be a rebel. I was just like, you're just a little kid. Like,
right.
You don't want to do what your parents tell you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Did you get good? Were you good in those 5 years?
I was pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm happy I was classically trained because a lot of that translates to my music now.
Right.
If I didn't play the piano, I don't think I'd be producing.
Were you able at some point to kind of get back into piano playing?
I've been meaning to get back into taking actual lessons.
Yeah.
I still practice here. I moved my piano in my room like last year, so I still I practice on my upright. But I've been meaning to get back into formal lessons just because like all the music now, it has been, but especially now moving on is like very heavily classically influenced.
Right.
So I'm just trying to get a little better on, like finger exercises and refreshing my chord progressions and stuff like that.
When you're laying out, because some of your music has some fairly complex, like classically inspired melodies and counterpoints and all that kind of thing. Do you play those out or are you writing those out like in MIDI?
So I know what it sounds like. So I'll go on the piano and I'll play it on my actual piano.
Yeah.
But sometimes it'll be so fast in the song because they're like little fills and stuff like that I have to draw those in.
Right.
I mean, because you're going to play it and it's going to be you have to quantize it and pretty much you might correct yourself anyway, so I just draw them in.
Sure.
But the chords and all that stuff, I usually do play real time.
Okay.
And then I go in and add more notes if I have to, or quantize them and stuff. like that.
Fair enough. I'll sometimes slow the song way down just to be able to play
it, yeah.
the little pieces.
Yeah.
And so for you, once you kind of dropped the piano as a kid, what else musically was going on in your life? What outside of classical music, what was the first thing that you kind of remember catching your ear just as a kid that, really stuck with you musically?
Yeah. It was I stopped piano when I was about 12. I picked up the guitar when I was 13, and that was 8th grade, 9th grade-ish. I was going through a pop punk phase, just like everyone else. Just a tip like Sum 41, Blink, like all
sure.
that. I picked up guitar and it became more of a pop punk thing, and then that turned into like metalcore in high school. I feel like a lot of the bass DJs are kind of hit the same exact path.
Same exact man. Yeah. I didn't have the punk thing, but I was very heavy in the metal stuff. And it's weird how much of a shared background a lot of DJs have.
Yeah. Dubstep and trap is it's pretty much electronic metal. For the most part, it's a build-up and breakdowns or the drops, and they're very
same
similar.
Vibe for sure.
Yeah,
and there's definitely been bands like Korn that they tried to make a dubstep album.
Right.
I mean, to be fair, they did make a dubstep album. I don't know how successful it was, but you're right that there's always been that connection, and I think probably for like this generation of middle schoolers right now, dubstep probably is what Korn was for me when I was 16,
Right.
Which is a weird thought.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, electronic music wasn't really,
no, it wasn't.
That was our electronic music, I guess. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, at the time, like I was also super into raves and electronic music. At the same time, I was listening to metal, but it wasn't the same environment, right?
Right.
Like electronic music was not cool.
Yeah.
Nobody else lived.
It was a bunch of nerds.
Yeah, totally a bunch of nerds and just weirdo. It's like all the standard high school clique. You're a goth or you're a raver or whatever.
Right.
Like it was just one of those, if you're not a nerd or a goth, you're probably a raver.
Right.
That kind of thing.
And even, DJs back then were just a dude in the background.
Yes.
Like they were tucked away in a corner, like no one really knew.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. The superstar culture didn't start emerging till way later. Guys like, AM and Aoki and all
AM,
that.
AM really paved that way.
He really did.
Sure.
Were you going out at all? Were you like, did you see that happening in LA when he was kind of making a name for himself?
Not kind of. That was 07, 08?
Yeah, around there.
Yeah, so 08 was my first rave, actually. It was EDC 2008. So when I was at the Coliseum. To give you an idea, Guetta and Benassi were headlining. So
okay, sure.
Yeah. Electro House was pretty much the big thing. Dirty South, Cascade, like all those guys.
Yep.
So I wasn't too much into the club scene. Also, I couldn't because I was 19 at the time, I think. 2008, yeah. We weren't really going out too much. Control was pretty much the party we were going to because it was 18 back then.
Right.
So I guess it kind of was the AM era with, all the electro, like the Justice and the Ed Banger era.
Yeah,
which kind of bleeds through.
It was all
to
happening
AM.
in the same time,
Yeah.
Like AM and Aoki had their thing at Cinespace,
right.
And I think the same people, like the Gettas and whatever, they would go play there too. It was just kind of depending on your age, is probably limited to what venues you could see it in.
Right.
But yeah, it was all kind of the
We
same.
actually saw, so I don't know if you remember, but AM was at Hard Halloween 2008, and he put on the Daft Punk helmet.
Oh, I remember that.
He played for 30 minutes and he was only playing Daft Punk tracks and everyone thought Daft Punk was there. And then he took it off and everyone was like, what the hell? But they're like, you can't get mad because it's still AM.
Right, yeah.
So I kind of caught that.
Yeah. So, God, that's the funniest thing, man.
That is still to this day my favorite rave I've been to because the lineup was unbelievable. It was Boys Noise, Soul Wax, Crystal Castles, Justice, and Deadmau5. It was the first time Deadmau5 premiered Ghost and Stuff live.
Oh, wow.
It was, but when Steve Duda came up and he pretended like he was Deadmau5 for like 5-10 minutes, and then Deadmau5 came and pretended to kill him, and then he came on and everyone went crazy. Yeah, it was
very theatrical, man.
It was, yeah.
That's hilarious.
It was awesome.
Well, I mean, any of those names are giant headlining names now too. So that's pretty historic. Yeah, I don't know if I have a story similar to that, but there's a story. I think I've told it on this show before that I played at Lollapalooza. I think it was 2008. Because I was from Chicago, so it was like local, playing super early in the day, all that. And AM was one of the headliners, and he crushed it, obviously. And the last day of Lollapalooza, they do this like on the grounds after party, like just for the performers and for the staff.
Okay.
So it's, maybe 100 people just in the middle of this giant festival field. And they bring in, a few kegs, they bring in a sound system. And it's kind of just like turning the giant festival into a little house party for the last few hours. And AM got up. I still remember this because was I DJing before him or after him? But basically, AM just destroyed everybody else who was going to DJ that day because he played for like 4 hours.
Oh my God.
To 100 people max, and just destroyed, like working hard the whole time. Right. Like being DJ AM. Yeah, and playing like suicidal tendencies and crazy punk music and mixing it all flawlessly.
So good.
And then he got off the decks, and I think maybe I had played first, and then it was the people after him, which is like, nah, man, we're done.
Yeah.
Like, there's no more party after that.
You can't fill those shoes. No.
Legendary.
That's so awesome,
man. I kind of miss that era, man. In a way, I'm always careful to not sound like an old guy talking about how like I love older eras.
Yeah, it's you
but
can't.
There was
though.
some kind of magic in the air of when what you were just talking about of Justice, Crystal Castles, the Bloghouse days, all of that. Everything was just so new, and there was no blueprint. And you tell me if you agree. The way I feel is that there was just no blueprint for what was going to happen or for where the music was going to go.
Right.
Like it just felt so open. And I don't know if it feels that way anymore to me.
No, I feel you. There was no formula, pretty much. It was, that was the first time you heard, dude, Justice's Cross was
revolutionary.
Still to this day, probably I'd put in my opinion, top 3 best electronic albums of all time.
Oh, yeah. Like the term game changer gets thrown around a lot, but that literally changed the game.
That album was the first time I heard rock and electronic music, or, metal pretty much, very distorted, stuff they were running through guitar pedals and stuff like that with like electronic music. And it was a perfect blend of like what I've been wanting to hear. Because I was into metal and I was just getting into electronic music. I'm like, this is a pretty good gateway. Like, I never knew this existed. And that was the first time I heard it.
Oh, man.
And it was, you're right. It was new. It hadn't been done before. And
had you been playing in bands before that?
Yeah. In high school, we had a bunch of we had some cover bands. I was with my friends, and nothing serious. Nothing that took off. But it was, there were metal bands pretty much.
Right. And what were you, post high school, did you have any thought that music could be something you wanted to do as a career? Yeah,
I think even when I was playing piano and I started picking up the guitar, that's what I wanted to do, but I never thought it'd be realistic. Especially back, 15 years ago, it wasn't as easy to pick up a laptop and make dope shit.
Oh yeah, and there's no roadmap for it back then either.
Right.
You couldn't look and see how somebody else had done it.
Yeah, there's no YouTube tutorials or anything like that. Yeah. So, I feel like I always wanted to, but I didn't think I could. Because I'm like, there's so many metal, I guess it's the same now, but I was like, there's so many metal bands that are so much better than the shit I'm doing. So, but then, electronic music, I picked up Reason when I was right out of high school, I was 18, and I was making, I grew up on hip hop as well.
Sure.
A lot of late 90s, early 2000s, a lot of club banger hip hop stuff.
Yeah.
Old Khaled and Lil Jon Ludacris, stuff like that.
Okay, sure. So not even necessarily the LA stuff, but
not so much the underground scene. It was more making dope club banger music.
Yeah.
So
Neptunes era.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Timbaland era.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Timbaland, Neptunes. Timbaland was doing all pretty much Jay-Z's, a lot of Ludacris stuff back then.
People forget about the Timbaland Ludacris songs, man.
Dude.
There were multiple, and they're all really, really good.
Yeah. The Potion is still one of the best hip-hop beats ever.
I love that song.
I will say that till the day I die. But I picked up Reason. I was doing a lot of hip-hop stuff because I was making hip-hop beats on the side. And then I was trying to incorporate guitar in it because you couldn't really record guitar in Reason, it was like Garage Band. And it was
Okay.
like super,
Yeah.
it was not easy.
Yeah. I think that's the reason I didn't even start with Reason. I was just like, this is not easy.
I don't know how I stuck it through for like 8 years, honestly. Everyone said the same thing. They're like, we started on Reason. I gave it like 2 days and I was like, I'm out. Like, I cannot do this.
But the people who stuck with it, man, I mean, you look at guys like Hero Bust and Snails and all that,
Right.
I think they would admit that a lot of their signature stuff comes from the fact that they wrestled that beast.
Right.
And,
Because you actually had to know sound design.
Right.
Yeah. You were designing from scratch. There was
and Reason sounds amazing if you know how to use it.
you know how to use it,
It's just really hard to know how to use it. Yeah.
Back to your point, like music, I think was always there, always a part of my life. I always wanted to do something with it. And then, once electronic music came into the picture, I felt like it got a little bit easier just because there was so much more resources, and then videos started coming up, like YouTube tutorials. I've watched countless tutorials on like how to make certain sounds.
Sure. And you can do it by yourself, right? You didn't need a band to get together at a certain time.
Exactly. I know. I remember. Remember Lucky Date?
Oh yeah,
100%. He was making all the Reason tutorials back then. So I was watching those every day, every time they came out.
Yeah, man. Shout out to Jordan.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people. He's like one of those. He's not an unsung hero, but I think producers like give him so much more credit than I think he got publicly, because he really was very early on those tutorials and guiding
no one was
people.
doing that.
Yeah,
it was him. There was no cymatics wasn't a thing. And people weren't doing like in-depth tutorials on Ableton. Maybe they were, and I didn't know because I wasn't an Ableton guy. But
I mean, what were you doing in the meantime? Did you go to college after high school?
Yeah, so I went to Cal State Northridge, graduated, got my bachelor's in accounting. So yeah, totally opposite end of the spectrum.
Was that something you enjoyed?
Honestly, looking back now, I don't know how or why I decided to do it. I think it's because I took the beginning accounting classes in business class because I wanted to do business, and I aced both of them. I was like, all right, maybe this could be something I can do.
Sure, yeah, if you're good at something, that helps.
Yeah, and I was producing on the side. Like I'd go to school, come home, like produce till 2, 3 in the morning.
Right.
Wake up, go to school, do the same thing, and then I graduated. I worked 2 years at a firm, and I was doing the same thing. And during tax season, you're working like 80, 90-hour weeks. So you'd be at work till like 3 in the morning, come back. I couldn't produce. I have to wake up in like 4 hours. Yeah, on my 2-year mark, I decided to quit. It was exactly 2 years. I decided to quit, and I was like, I can't. I was picking up a little bit more steam back then. It was like 4 years ago. So I decided to quit. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm like, I got to a point where I was waking up like totally hating my life.
Yeah.
Once you get to that point, you gotta.
Yeah.
You can't do that to yourself.
How did your parents feel about that?
I mean, they were not happy.
Yeah.
Because they, especially the parent, like, old school, like, we're Armenian, so it's very like old school mentality, and like Middle Eastern mentality is like, to them, having a career in music isn't a thing.
Right.
They don't know what it's like now that, it's a lot easier. It's not easy, but it's a lot easier relative to what it was back 20 years ago when they were young, 30 years ago.
Right.
So they were like, oh, this is so unrealistic. And they were like, yeah, that's such a good job, this, that. I'm like, just give me some time. Like, I got this.
Yeah. I was just talking to Borgor for this show, and he told a story about how he, long after he kind of blew up and became successful, he had brought his parents out to some giant festival he was playing for like 20,000, 30,000 people. And then afterwards they went and got dinner, and his dad was like, so, when are you going to get a real job?
Even that wasn't enough.
Yeah.
Jeez, yeah. I feel that.
Yeah.
Damn.
I'm ignorant about Armenian culture for the larger extent. Growing up, let's say, like, what are those values? You said it's an old school mentality. Like, what of that have you carried with you? Or what of that, do you still sort of relate to or find value in? Yeah,
I mean, as far as my parents' mentality and everything, they always supported what I did. But, if you're going from like a very secure full-time job to something that's not secure at all and there's no definite future in it, they're very like, doctor, lawyer, and, kind of like down that path for the most part. So that's why it was kind of a shock to them to be like,
oh, of course. That's quit. Just good parenting, man.
Right,
Nobody
it is.
wants
And I'm not even knocking that. I totally get it. But it's just, it is what it is. It's like, different times, different mentality. But yeah, I mean, values growing up, we were very, very close-knit family-wise. I've had the same circle of friends since I was 4 or 5.
Oh, wow.
It's been like 12 of us, and all our families are really close. And I think that was, that's been very helpful in life, just because like
it's really important.
Brotherhood, there's a code there of like friendship and respect and stuff like that. So I see myself carrying that through all, walks in life.
It teaches you how to treat people, right?
Totally.
Yeah, and how to deal like fairly. And I think that's very true. I was lucky too that I didn't really have that kind of upbringing, but a lot of my childhood friends are still my close friends.
Right.
And I think just the experience of knowing somebody for so long and growing with somebody in those formative years, if you can maintain that connection, I think that just helps you relate to the rest of the world a lot better.
Right. It's a good balance too.
Yeah, it's one of those like kind of random advantages I feel very lucky to have had.
Yeah.
So, you said you were unhappy with the accountant lifestyle. Was it a scary moment for you to kind of take that leap and like make that decision?
Yeah.
Was there like one particular day or one incident that kind of made you,
looking back, that I can't even remember what happened that day, because I was that month was a mess. My dog died. I quit my job, and I broke up with my girlfriend, who's now my wife.
Oh yeah.
So
that's a lot.
Shout out to her, first of all, for sticking around.
Yeah.
But it was a lot. I was like mentally a mess because I didn't know what was going on.
Of course,
but I just knew that I wanted to do music.
Yeah.
So I can't even tell you like what that day was like when I decided like this is it.
Yeah.
But I guess what led to it is that year I was picking up a lot of steam. It was the blog era too, so I had a lot of blogs were starting to cover my songs, like after like numerous attempts of like sending it out and being like, no, this sucks, whatever.
Yeah.
And finally, like Jake, I don't know if you know Jake from Do Androids Dance.
Only via email, but
okay.
I talked to him
back
on there.
then. Yeah, he was one of the first dudes that was like, I sent him my Drunken Love remix I did for Beyonce, and that he was like, yo, this is crazy. And they premiered on Do Androids Dance, and like a blog premiere was like, super
back
crazy.
Then, that
back
meant
then.
a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And they premiered it, and then Skrill played it at Coachella that year, and that was the first time I had gotten big DJ support.
That's a big moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd never experienced anything like that. Like people were tweeting me this, and I was getting like no activity, no tweets, no nothing. So I'm like, oh shit, my phone's like getting some notifications. So I'm like, this feels kind of good.
Yeah.
And after that, like I started picking up a lot more steam, and that was like 4 or 5 months before I quit my job.
Okay.
So those 4 or 5 months, I was like busting my ass, just like doing everything and staying up super late, coming home from work, staying up late.
Yeah. Once you get into that momentum, you're right, that just does start to feel better and better, and you kind of want to keep fueling it.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I guess triggered everything and started getting. I was like, all right, I guess things are happening. So I'm like, let me take the jump now. I'm still at home. I got no rent. I've got a good amount saved up for my job, so I'm financially okay for a little bit, and that was it. So I'm like, I got to do it now.
You took the leap, man. That's good. I'm glad you did. How long did it take from when you started learning to produce to that point where a blog posted your song? Like, how long were you just writing music that nobody heard?
Like almost 7 years.
Yeah,
from like 2008 to 2014, 6 years. I mean, the first 3 years doesn't really. Especially back, it doesn't count. Like it counts. Yeah. It definitely counts because you're finding your sound. But like, you're making like 100 songs a day. Like you're doing like the random kick clap patterns and like little melodies and stuff.
You don't
like
necessarily know what you're doing.
Yeah,
it's more experimenting.
Totally. Yeah. And so I'd say like 5-6 years. And it's funny because a lot of fans don't see that side.
Right. They'll
see some dude blow up overnight. And rarely it will happen like what their first song will just take off, But they don't see that backstory of like, Snake's a great example. Snake has been producing for like 20 years, 15 years almost,
He's got a crazy history.
Yeah. I don't know it in depth, but I know that he's been doing it for a minute. And, Bird Machine was the first real thing that was like, put him on the EDM map at least.
For sure, yeah. It's what broke him in the States too. Because
he's very international.
Yeah, well, he was producing for people in Paris before then, but I think it was very much in a localized kind of sense,
I know he was doing stuff for Gaga like in 2009 and 10, so he's doing like label back end label stuff.
Yeah, he's a really interesting guy, man. I want to get him on here so bad.
That'd be awesome.
It'd be really. He doesn't. I don't think he really does interviews. So I'm trying.
He barely talks. I feel.
Yeah, that's also true.
Yeah.
So once you kind of got that cosign, Skrillex plays the song and all of that. Was it sort of an overnight thing in terms of people's perception of you? Like, did you all of a sudden start getting hit up by a lot of people or taken more seriously? Or was it more of a gradual thing?
It was definitely gradual. It wasn't a make or break.
Yeah.
I mean, it was definitely cool that he played it, and it was a, Coachella's a pretty big, like, everyone's going to be looking at that set list. And it's cool. It's funny because it's 2 weekends. So I remember going on SoundCloud on my stats and looking at the 1 month stats for that song. And both days of Coachella, there was a crazy spike in plays, and then it would go back to normal.
Right.
It was literally just that day. But yeah, it was pretty gradual. I would say it was more like, okay, this is good momentum, and then I started sending more stuff out, and I guess other blogs started covering because maybe they saw that Do Androids Dance covered it. So it just kind of like snowball effect.
Yeah, that's how it's supposed to happen, I think.
Yeah.
Were you putting out a lot of songs independently at that point, just posting them up?
Yeah. It was. Yeah, labels there weren't too many like small indie EDM labels back then. The Monster Cats and Owlsla and Mad Decent maybe were just... Mad Decent had started. They had the Jeffries thing going for a minute.
Right.
But that was a lot more aggressive than the stuff I was doing.
Right.
But yeah, it was all independent. It was just putting it up on SoundCloud, free downloads. And back then, reposts were a really, really big thing.
Yeah.
So the getting reposts and getting your song out there, and then all the downloads, people would do the whole follow to download thing. That was huge back then.
Yeah, no, I did the same thing, man.
We all did back.
Oh, of course we did. Of course we did. I just don't know what you do. Like, if I was just starting off now, how would you even do it?
I've seen that. I've seen dudes that are like crushing it now, that you go on their socials and it's like, there's nothing, it's very low numbers.
Right.
And it was like so easy to grow back then because like people were actually downloading music.
Right.
It's a streaming era now. So
yeah, exactly. And the streaming, I always get on my soapbox about this, but the streaming services are great, but they aren't friendly to new artists.
Right. They're not.
And it's weird because we all know, like you just said, all these young kids who are so talented, but And they'll ask me for advice or how they can get themselves out there. And sometimes I don't know what to tell them.
Yeah, because it's so different. I have the same thing. I'm like, sometimes I'll catch myself saying like, oh, dude, just like make blog contacts and stuff. I'm like, shit, that's not like, it's not as effective as it used to be.
Anymore,
yeah, I mean, like, shout out to all the blogs still giving love. But from a consumer standpoint, I don't think, like, when I first started DJing, 7 years ago, 2010, 11, I'd literally open up my computer, go on Dancing Astronaut's website, which no one goes directly anymore. You're getting traffic from, Twitter or Facebook, like redirected.
Right.
I'd go on their website, look at the new releases, and just literally download everything or try to rip stuff because you couldn't download it. And it was all like in-house players. There was no SoundCloud.
Right, exactly.
So,
and there was a certain time when you really trusted those blogs, right? You didn't, like, you knew if it was the blog that you liked, probably you were going to like the music.
Right.
And so it was all these sort of independent curators where now the control has kind of gone back to the labels.
Right.
And I don't know how I feel about it, man.
It's different times.
Yeah. I don't know. I hope something comes along to help out the new artists because I just don't know what to tell them half the time.
Yeah, I think, the best way for them now is having big DJ support.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's the number one thing. And you can't, like, it's hard to tell someone to, like, make a song to get it supported because that's not what you should be doing.
Yeah, and if that's your mentality, then probably your song's going to suck.
Right.
But you're completely right that is kind of what's needed. And I think the other thing is to not try to play the same game that we played, Right. Like, don't worry about SoundCloud reposts anymore. It's kind of meaningless at this point. Like, it's not 100% meaningless, but it's not going to make your career anymore. Yeah. And, more so worry about your vision and what you have to say and why you're different from everyone else doing it.
Right.
I think, to me, and if you talk to, promoters in 2018 too, everybody is just looking for what's different and what's unique now. Whereas I think a few years ago, if you were a trap producer, it was like interchangeable almost,
Right.
You could make a couple good trap songs and then you were just kind of in that circuit, and they might book like 5 trap guys on a lineup, and you
Right.
could be one of those guys.
Yeah.
I don't think that it really exists so much anymore.
No, and I guess it's cool because promoters now are actually looking at the music.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Shout out to all the good
The
promoters.
ones that
out
are,
there.
yeah. I mean, that's how it should be. They should be booking you based on that and not numbers. And I guess it is a little bit harder now because it's hard for these newer dudes to get their numbers up the way we did.
Right.
So I guess that's probably why promoters are shifting, because they know everyone's kind of at the same, everyone's kind of at the same rate. Like,
Yeah. And I think there is this, I was just talking about this, there's this unspoken agreement that I think we all understand that things do need to change and that the scene is kind of evolving, but none of us really know exactly where it's going or like what the next move should be. So everyone's still sort of doing their thing, but then trying to kind of reach out or innovate in little different ways and see if anything sticks.
Right.
It's an interesting time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like what you've been doing, man, with the with the classical bass movement that you've kind of stamped on everything you do. Is that something that you were thinking about back in those days, like even early on?
Yeah, I think so, for sure. Even if you listen to like the super early hip hop beats and stuff, every track had a piano in it. Very dark, minor, classical harmonic progressions and stuff like that. So,
were you listening to classical music?
I did. Yeah. Not like not all the time, but for sure, like for inspiration and stuff like that.
Yeah.
When I was studying or when I was driving, I'd be listening, mostly then. But yeah, a lot of it came from being classically trained, and I was like, okay, I've always wanted to incorporate this, even with the stuff. When I was playing guitar in high school, like a lot of the progressions were on guitar, but the riffs were very dark and something Mozart would play if he played the guitar, kind of thing. So, and then once electronic music came around, like I tried to translate that. So now that's what I'm trying to do is, have heavy bass music, but incorporate it with like strings and violins and pianos and very dark progressions,
right?
While still keeping. So I have the musical side, and then I still want to keep it heavy because I want people to, feel it and rage at it at a show. For example.
Right. Of course, you want to keep that same vibe that we were talking about.
Yeah.
And I think it's good, man. Like, I feel like this is a cool time to have this conversation with you because you're not a beginning artist, but you're still, sort of building to where you want to get to.
Totally.
Like we all are.
Right.
But it's a cool time because we were just talking about how everything is changing and how you do have to sort of stand out and have a stronger vision than maybe you had to a couple of years ago. And I like what you've been doing with it to kind of
Thanks, man.
just, of course, man, to just step out of the rat race a little bit and make it like, no, this is just my own thing.
Right.
This is my sound. It's not really just the sound of the genre.
Right.
Is that sort of a conscious thing for you to keep the purity of that vision?
Yeah. It's not too far out to, left or right of the spectrum where it's like, what the hell is this?
Right.
Where it's like still bass music where people can relate to it because it's bass music. But my twist on it is like the super musical part and the very having like crazy growls with pianos. Like I want to be that guy who's doing that. So like people hear that song, people hear like a little piano fill or a violin thing. Like I want people to be like, oh, that's a Jaykode thing. Like they know it's So it's just down the middle. I mean, it's down the middle, but just to the left or right a little bit, just so you have your own lane.
Yeah, it's a curveball.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
And you sent me a bunch of unreleased stuff last night, and I was listening to it all in a row. All really great music, but I listened all in a row, and that's for me when it clicked a little bit of sort of the cohesiveness of what you're all doing.
Awesome.
Because it was, different songs, different styles, tempos, whatever, but those elements were all there. Have you ever considered, a bigger body of work, like an album or something? To me, last night listening, I was like, this would make sense if you kind of listen like front to back. You know what I mean?
I love that's how you felt, because that's kind of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
As far as an album goes, I feel like at this point I have so much unreleased stuff that I can probably put out an album. But no, I've definitely, that's crossed my mind. An album it's a tricky thing. Like I've seen some producers start out with an album and I'm like, this is dope, but I don't want to say a waste because they put so much time into it. It's not a waste of talent, but it's like, it has to be kind of strategic.
Right.
Like you can't, it's hard to put out I don't want to say can't, but it's hard to put out an album right off the bat.
Yeah.
Especially when you're going to have a fan base of like singles that kind of leading up to an album of like, oh, what I'm about. You know, it's hard to give everyone that content at once if they've never heard of you.
Yeah.
So that's why I feel like once that day comes where it's going to be an album, it's going to be, okay, I'm going to feel it. I'm going to be like, okay, now it's time. Like people have heard enough of the singles and EPs.
Right.
Where like they know what's coming. And then the album's going to be like the, you know,
you want to till the soil a little more.
Yeah, for sure.
Get it ready to grow. Yeah, I can understand that, man.
Yeah.
You know, leading up to these bigger projects that we're talking about now, prior to that, you know, you've been doing singles with some labels after a while, right? Like, was Bygor the first one?
Yeah, so I had a bunch of stuff with Bygor in like 2016, 17. I had Beehive with them. That was a good one. It did really well. That was in 15, actually. Shit, it's almost been 3 years.
Yeah.
And then I did Origin with Party Thieves, beginning of that year. Supposed to have an EP with them, but it fell through in summer of 16, and then I ended up doing singles for all of those. Like, I ended up releasing my singles.
Right.
Yeah, so they were kind of the first, like, big label to push my stuff out.
How was that experience, you know, going from just being used to just doing everything on SoundCloud yourself to then having, you know, a team behind you for better or for worse?
Yeah, it was dope. I mean, it was the first time I'm like, oh, I have pretty much a whole, like, you're hitting a new market too because you're hitting their fan base.
Right.
So it was cool to get it to a bigger market, you know, bigger audience.
Sure.
Especially Beehive. Beehive was the first one, and that definitely had the classical bass thing going too. It was like the dubstep meets trap meets a lot of piano stuff and violins and you know. So it was cool. It was awesome. It was the first take of like seeing what a label can do.
In the future, is that, like, where are you with labels at this point? Because I know some people at this point will say labels don't matter anymore, or labels aren't as influential as they used to be. And a lot of people have moved to sort of just doing everything themselves or making their own label, you know, which I have mixed feelings about.
Right.
Because I feel like we have enough labels.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
but where do you fall on that spectrum?
I feel like there's so much music. They're labels are putting out so much now that it's hard to catch a vibe, and it's very like they're putting out a lot of different stuff. I mean, you still have like, I feel like Monster Cat's pretty cohesive with their stuff. And
yeah, they're one of the few right now.
Elysian, shout out to Keeb. He's still doing his thing. Like, you can tell an Elysian release. So yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's still dope to release on labels, and we're definitely pitching a lot of the stuff to labels, the unreleased stuff, because you're hitting a bigger market, you're hitting a different market that you would normally hit, because a lot of these labels might have very dedicated fan bases.
Right.
So I'm still all in for releasing on labels, especially with singles, and it's cool if you can get a label to see the whole vision and to back you.
That's the biggest key, I think.
Which I know Mousetrap is one of the best examples. They do so well with like really picking up an album or picking up an artist and pushing them and like seeing the vision and really believing in them. Black Gummy is a great example. He's awesome. He's one of my good homies too, and he's been on Mousetrap since day one. And they push him really well, and then it's cool because the fans that of the label keep seeing the same name over and over, and it becomes a family thing. And then once they throw shows, everyone comes out to the shows because it's a family affair, and you know. Yeah,
no, it's a whole cohesive like environment,
it's a cult following.
Yeah,
too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're right that is the way to do it the right way. And maybe that's the takeaway, is that if you can find someone who really understands where you're coming from, then sort of sky's the limit. Because I've had experiences on both sides. I've had people who totally got it and were just couldn't ask for better help, and then other people who want to put the music out but maybe have different aims than you have,
right? And
then that gets confused sometimes.
Yeah.
Have you had that experience ever?
With a label?
Yeah, you don't have to name names.
No, it's not. I haven't necessarily had that, but I feel like also, I don't want to say a lot, but some labels might be scared to venture off and do something that's a little bit more different.
Yeah.
And it sucks because there's like some really dope shit out there that won't see the light of day because it's not matching up with everything else.
Right.
But yeah, it's a weird place to be, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and you're right too, that I mean, just as we evolve as artists, labels evolve as entities too, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because we were just saying how there's like infinity million labels out there, but at the same time, at a certain point, there's only a few labels that I think any of us really would want to work with. You know, there's probably like 5 to 10 labels you could name. You'd be like, any of those would be great.
Would be cool, yeah.
But then after that, it's like I wouldn't know who to say.
Right.
And so then when you feel like your options are diminishing, it can be kind of stressful.
Right.
For you, you know, we were talking that you're sitting on all of this music right now. Is this music that you've been writing over a period of time, or is this all new recent stuff?
There's some stuff in there that's been sitting for almost 2 years.
Yeah.
But there's a light at the end of the tunnel because some of them are getting release dates. A lot of them are getting release dates. But luckily, it's still very much in line with what I'm doing now, and it's not dated.
Right.
Which is, you know, I always try to make it whereas it's not. You want to, like I was saying in the, you know, before, it's kind of trendy. Not trendy in a bad way, but it's kind of like down the middle where people are going to enjoy it. But it's just your own thing where even if you listen to this 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, it's still going to be like, oh, this is a Jaykode track and it's not outdated.
Sure. And I think if you're doing a good job of sticking to the concept, you know, the classical bass and all of that, then I think that will give your tracks more longevity, right?
Right.
Because they'll fit into the rest of your work regardless of when they come out. Whereas if you kind of had less of an identity with it, then they'd probably sound more dated.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Which I think is a lesson for anyone making music.
Totally. That's a learning process with every producer.
100%. Are you a fast producer?
I've made songs in 8 hours, and some songs have taken me like 6 months. So it just really depends on the workflow and like how I'm feeling about that song. Like my Runaway remix, which is one of my biggest remixes as far as plays go, took like 6 hours.
Right.
And then some bodies of work that take like 6 months don't even see the light of day.
Yeah.
You know, so it's
that's
like
the way it goes.
It's always like that, and it's like, God, the one I spend the most time on, just no one gives a shit about.
Pretty much, man. Pretty much. I long ago gave up trying to predict what of my stuff people were gonna like.
Right.
I don't know. I have no idea anymore. Yeah. Like I know I'm proud of all of it. But
that's all that matters.
Yeah,
for the most part, that's all that matters.
Yeah, yeah. At the end of the day, I think it is.
Yeah, for sure.
But I always like that about you, that you weren't necessarily flooding the streets. Like you weren't like posting up a new song every week, you know what I mean? But then when you did, I would always check it out because I think you were able to kind of maintain a certain level of quality, you know?
Yeah.
So it's,
thanks.
I don't know if that was intentional.
No, not necessarily intentional. It was just like, I wasn't there's people that release songs all the time, and it's like, I want each song to breathe and do its thing, and I want people to get it and understand it and take it in and get what's going on until the next one comes in, and then they're like, okay, like you said, I want it to be cohesive.
Right.
So yeah, it's more like I want each body of work to be like everything and like 100% of like what I'm trying to do, instead of just like putting stuff out just for the sake of putting stuff out. You know?
Yeah.
So I'm very picky about, even with remixes, like I'll get a lot of remix opportunities from labels, and I'm very picky about what I want to release or what I want to remix. And it's kind of like, I have to hear it right off the bat. Like I have to hear the song and be like, I know exactly what I want to do with this, or else it's like, remixes specifically.
Right. Yeah. No, I feel you on that, because sometimes, if you accept something and you don't have an idea for it, you'll just kind of end up just playing around with all the stems, and you're under a deadline, so you feel like you have to make something, and then of course it doesn't end up being as good as you wanted.
Because it's not natural.
Right.
You know?
How do you feel about, sometimes I have an issue with remixes where I have trouble remixing songs I like, because I feel like it's already a good song.
You don't want to, you want to make sure you're doing justice.
Yeah. Or like, I feel like it's already good. Like, why would I do something with it?
Right.
How do you pick what songs to remix?
It's, now that you bring that up, when I was first starting out, I feel like I was just remixing things a lot more, because I feel like that's a good way to get your stuff out. Yeah,
and it's a good way to learn too.
For sure. Because you're working off something that's already made. So,
right.
But yeah, now it's like, now that I think about it, besides the Porter Robinson remix, I did a Shelter remix 5 months ago.
Yeah, I saw that.
That actually was not I was not planning on doing a Shelter remix at all. I was literally making a like Post Malone type hip hop beat with like guitars and trap drums.
Yeah.
Like Little Peep kind of influence stuff. And
Post Malone type beat.
Yeah. And then I was like, fuck, I feel like something's missing here. And then I had the acapella to Shelter, and I pitched it up because it's like 5 semitones up from the normal one, and had that like little chipmunk Kanye type stuff. And I'm like, damn, this kind of sounds dope. and then that was that's all I had left. Like the song was mastered and everything. I put that acapella in there. I mixed it in a little bit, and then I was like screw it. Like I haven't put out something in a few months. Like just at end of the year kind of special treat for everyone. It's a lot more down tempo and stuff I've done.
Yeah.
But besides that, it's been a while since I've heard a song and been like, I want to remix this and put it out. Because I feel like, I don't know, maybe you get to a point where this is how it's been for me. It's like all the remixes were just like people hitting, like labels being like, hey, we want you to remix this pretty much. But
it's almost like they just want some of your sauce, rather than like you being excited about a project.
I feel like, yeah, exactly. And I feel like the more you progress as a producer, you become a lot more like honed in on your sound, where before like you're making everything. And I like the innocence of that, and I missed the innocence of that because you didn't have any guidelines or stuff that you need to make or want to make.
It's more carefree.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's very natural.
Yeah.
Until you find your sound, and then that becomes natural, obviously. But
but
yeah, it was very innocent. It was very like open, and you didn't know what you were doing, so you were remixing a lot more to see like how you can bring your own sound to this song, for example. But as you get super picky, it becomes a lot harder to be like. It kind of touches on the point where you said it's. If a song's already good, what can you do to it?
Right.
On top of like, how can I make this my own song as well?
Right.
It becomes very hard. I don't know. I just get super picky now.
Yeah. Where do you see your own music heading? Like, has there ever been, actually, even before I ask that, has there ever been a point where you felt either pressure, either from yourself or from someone else, management or fans or anything, about something you couldn't do, like you wanted to make a sound or you wanted to have a certain style and you felt like you something was pressuring you not to do it, either internally or externally?
Yeah, I wouldn't say so much like pressure of not being able to do it. I mean, my end goal is to be a studio producer down the line.
Okay.
Make like, pop hits and urban pop or
working with other
R&B
artists.
type stuff. Yeah, totally. Like, I mean, the Shelter remix, if you stripped acapella, like stuff like that.
Right.
It's hard to put that stuff out as Jake. And that was an example of like, I don't know how people are going to react because it's kind of slower, but I was like, whatever. It's like, it's still my thing. It's still me doing it.
And it seemed like you got a great reaction.
Yeah. It was very like, we put it out like a week later. It was no promo for it or anything. I was just like, let's just give this out to the fans. But no, it hasn't been a pressure like that. It's more been like down the line, since I do want to be a studio producer, it's going to be very different than the aggressive stuff I'm doing now. So it's kind of like, I'm just making beats on the side now and producing and pitching them out. Right. And they'll be more of like a so-and-so produced by Jaykode, and that's fine. That's still fine with me to have my name on it.
I kind of like that, man. That's almost, it reminds me of what you were talking about earlier when you were working as an accountant and making beats at home. And it's almost like you flipped that idea, and now you're like, working as Jaykode and
still making beats at home.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you found a way to still keep that vibe alive, which is good, because I think there's a danger, right? If the work and play become the exact same thing,
right,
and you don't have any other outlet for what used to be kind of just a creative, carefree.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's exactly it. There's so much stuff I want to make, like cool stuff on the side, and it's cool to just be able to produce it for someone else instead of like me. I mean, I can make a side project as well, but it's just like you got to start from scratch, and it is a lot of work.
A lot of work, man.
But yeah, I like that. I like making stuff for other people, and there's this new girl. Her name is Sarah Skinner. She's killing it right now. Great vocalist.
Where have I heard that name? It's really familiar.
She had a feature on OK's album.
Okay, maybe that's where.
She had vocals on one of those tracks. But yeah, I'm doing some production stuff for her. So we're working together, and it's a lot of like, down tempo trap, like very like deep trap kind of stuff, trap drums, but like a lot of ambient guitars and pads and stuff like that. So, and that's stuff I've always wanted to do. So it's cool that you still have that outlet.
Yeah,
but it's still your own. It still has your own sauce to it.
Right. Yeah, and it's like a valve where you can kind of channel those impulses. I think that's a smart way to do it. Yeah.
Because you can't. I mean, you can. I guess people just. You can make bangers all day.
Oh, yeah.
But I feel like I needed like an outlet of like something else.
No, 100%, man. And everyone has their own theories about, some people feel like if you have a certain brand and a certain sound, you can't stray away from it ever,
Yeah.
And I respect all
of
it.
Totally.
Yeah, like I get it from a business perspective, but I think it's sort of problematic in the sense that we're all growing as people and as artists all the time. And so if you restrict yourself too much to just one thing, eventually you're going to hate it, and probably your fans who have also matured in that time, are probably going to be tired of it too.
Right,
I don't know. But then again, I don't know. Maybe I'm bullshitting because we were just talking about Wolfgang Gardner before, and we were talking about how he's making all of this old-sounding Wolfgang Gardner, like classic electro vibes.
Right.
It's fucking great to hear that again.
It's awesome.
I love hearing that. So maybe I'm
full
totally
circle
wrong.
for him though, because he was making that, and then he kind of went into more funk, kind of deep, like garage type
You're
stuff.
right.
And then,
Yeah, he kind of returned. He's got the
returned back to
triumphant
it. Yeah.
return. You're right.
Yeah,
How was it? You just worked with him, man. How was that?
it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, dude's been, my number one inspiration for 10 years. And I feel like he's been such a big inspiration as far as like the classical sound, because he was the first time I've heard like classical music and electro meshed into one,
Right.
It's like, and that was the original classical bass
Yeah.
genre I heard.
Right.
So it was cool. It was like full circle. I was sitting there sometime in the studio. I'm like, dude, this is crazy. Like, I saw this dude at Control like 10 years ago, and it was like one of the best shows I've ever seen in my life. And now it's like we're making a track together, and it was a perfect blend of both of our stuff. Because I always call him Sensei too, because he's like I've always looked up to him, and I was like, you've literally shaped my sound, and now it's like so awesome to be able to do it together. And he told me too. He was like, he told me this. He was like, I feel like I'm working with a clone of myself, with just like a younger version. I was like, dude, this is crazy.
Oh,
Like,
that's amazing.
yeah, and I'm like this because of you. So it's
Right.
It was cool to.
Yeah,
to
he's
do
an
that.
inspirational guy, man.
For sure.
Yeah, having him on this show was just mind blowing.
Yeah.
I had never met him before that day.
Oh,
And,
nice.
Yeah, and he just was like so open and had such a crazy story. And me too. I admire him so much.
Yeah, I didn't know a lot of the stuff that he talked about too, which is
I don't know if
awesome to
anybody
open
did.
up. Yeah.
And it was so funny because now it's like you know him a little bit. And I talked to him afterwards, like when the podcast episode came out, and I was like, "Yeah, man, that was so good. Like, thanks for being so open. And, like, people are really excited about it, all that." And I don't think he had listened to it yet. And then he went and listened to it, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I said a lot of stuff." He's like, "I didn't remember saying."
Just got
half
in the
of that."
zone.
Yeah, it's like perfect. Man.
Yeah, it's awesome.
That's what
Natural.
we tried to do.
Right.
So for you, like I said, you sent me a bunch of new music, all of which is excellent, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Absolutely, man. Where are you trying to take it in 2018 and beyond? What's the 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan for you?
Yeah, I mean, really, really getting into the classical bass stuff. It'd be dope to have. I don't know how I can pull this off, but it'd be dope to have some live elements of this, like a choir, or violins, or like
One of the songs you sent me had a crazy guitar solo, man. I feel like you could rip a guitar solo on some of that.
Was that the Wolfgang collab?
No, it was the one with Tassion, or how do you say it?
Okay, so actually that was Tassion did that guitar solo.
Oh, okay.
Which is funny because I play the guitar too. I didn't know he played the guitar, so I didn't think we could do something like that.
Right.
And so we were sending, because he's in Philly, so we were sending back and forth for the last drop, and he's like, "Yo, I got this thing." I'm like, "What the hell? Like, how'd you not tell me you played guitar?" Like, we've been in the studio for like, a few times.
And he was ripping, man. Yeah.
He's unbelievable. That dude is like way too underrated.
Yeah, oh, for sure. For sure.
I had a Sullivan King collab like two years ago, or maybe a year ago, and there was a guitar solo in that too. The breakdown was a straight up metal breakdown that we did, and he played that live at Avalon, which is cool. So I definitely want to incorporate like live stuff. It's just gonna be very hard. Like, but eventually, if there's like a big show that I want to do, I'd love for it to be like with an orchestra and like a full blown violins and strings and choirs and stuff. So
that'd be amazing.
But definitely still push the classical bass sound. I really want it to like resonate with people this next 2-3 years, and I feel like it's it touches on bass music, but still the musical part. So that's why I want it to be like, even if maybe dubstep or trap or whatever is going in a different direction, I still want the musical part to carry it and be like, oh, this is still dope. If the genre might be like,
exactly
saturated or something.
No,
like that,
I think that's really smart. And what I was trying to say earlier too is I think that's how you're able to separate yourself. Is it can kind of just be its own thing. Doesn't necessarily have to be the current sound of dubstep or whatever. It can just be your thing. And that's I think as artists, that's what any of us could hope for, right?
Right.
It's just to have your own thing that
Right.
people like for
That's
you.
the goal.
Yeah. Well, hell yeah, man. Is there, in the short term, anything people should be looking out for? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, so the Wolfgang collab should be out very soon. I've got a collab with Ricky San that's coming out soon as well.
Yeah, that song's crazy.
Thanks. There is the Tassion collab. There is a few other ones I can't talk about yet, but yeah, a lot in the pipeline the next 2, 3, 4 months towards that, rest of the year too. So
awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, to wrap it up, I usually end just by asking a pretty simple question. You don't have to think about it hard off the top of your head. Just a time in your life when music really had a deep effect on you in a moment, and it could be something from your childhood. It could be from 5 minutes ago. It could be something you heard on the radio, just anything that kind of just changed your brain. Just first thing that pops into your head.
No, I've got a good one.
Okay.
Up to like 7th grade, I was a straight up hip hop kid, like hip hop and pop, like anything on the radio and stuff like that, 102.7 and stuff like that. But I would carpool. I was in 7th grade, junior high, so I'd carpool with this one dude. His name was Jack. He was like a high schooler. He was like maybe a senior, so 6 years between us. He'd pick me up, he'd pick his sister up, and he'd take me home. And every time in the car, he'd be playing pop punk records.
Yeah.
And stuff that was like ripped from K-Rock on like tape. And I was like, it was the first time I had been exposed to rock or anything that's not hip hop, not Eminem and Ludacris pretty much.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing, man, I'm so glad you asked me this. I remember hearing, do you remember Boxcar Racers, I Feel So?
Man, I remember the title. I don't remember what it sounds like.
It was their biggest song.
Okay. I'd know it if I heard it.
Yeah, it was like, I feel so mad, feel so angry. Yeah. It was that. And it was the first, I heard that and I was like, dude, this is, I don't know why, but it just resonated with me. And it was a rip from SoundCloud, from K-Rock. And it was Napster back then. Napster days or LimeWire, BearShare was one of those.
Yeah.
And I remember I tried, because I never talked to him because I was so shy. So I was trying so hard to find what fucking song this was. And I searched like lyrics, like it was dial-up internet back then, so I wasn't getting crap online. Anyway, I found it. I don't know how I found it. And like that literally opened up a whole world of like Blink and pop punk.
Yeah.
Which to this day led to everything I've done like up to now.
Wow.
And I feel like if I never carpooled with that dude, I probably would have been stuck in the hip hop game, not in a bad way, but that's what I would have been listening to. And probably not got into rock music because the group I was hanging out with in high school was all hip hop heads and no one was listening to rock. So yeah, I think if it wasn't for that carpool, I don't think I'd probably wouldn't be making the stuff I'm making now, honestly, if I think about it.
Yeah.
And I've told him, like, I still keep in touch with him. It's been like, 16 years, but I'll still hit him up and be like, yo, man, if it wasn't for your carpool and it wasn't for the pop punk, Sum 41, Blink, and Offspring and all the stuff you were listening to, like, I probably wouldn't have gotten into any of this.
That's so dope, man. I love that story, man, because it sometimes is just that right place, right time. You catch a little spark and it sends you on a whole new trajectory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. I'm really glad you asked me that. It's been a while since I've
What was that
thought
guy's
about
name?
that. His name's Jack.
Shout out to Jack.
Yeah.
Man.
Crazy.
Well, yeah, this has been great, man. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Anything else you want to get out there?
I think that's it.
I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, man. Thanks. Peace.
All right, that's the show. Shout out to Jaykode. Thank you for having me over, man. Such a good conversation. For everybody out there listening, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Watch out for Jaykode. His collaboration with Wolfgang Gardner called The Upside Down is out right now. Lots of new music coming soon. My name is Willy Joy. You can always hit me up at Willy Joy or at Back to Back Pod. Don't forget to check out my new single, Will You Be There? Don't forget to check out the Back to Bangers Spotify playlist. Everything is going to be linked in the description of this episode. That's it for this week. I have a busy month coming up, a lot to do for this podcast. I hope everyone out there is doing well. Hope you're having a good day, good week, good month, good 2018. Fuck it. I will talk to you next Tuesday. For Back to Back, this is Willy Joy. Peace.